Welcome tonight to our Bountiful City Council work session, and we're going to talk accessory structure height tonight. And so we're glad you're here, and we'll have our regular City Council meeting starting at 7 o'clock. But now we will begin with our work session, and we'll turn the time over to our planning director, Mr. Francisco Astorga, to kick us off on that discussion. Oh, wait, before we begin, do we have Councilwoman Child? Okay. Maybe we can just test. Councilwoman Child, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great, and we can hear you. Okay, good. Thank you for being with us remotely.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will turn the time now over to Francisco.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's see if this comes up. Council Member Child, can you see the screen here? Just double checking.
Yes, I can.
Thank you so much. So this is a follow-up work session discussion from that date, that council meeting which took place on July 8th, 2025, where staff is requesting discussion and guidance regarding the language that was requested on July 8th that we provided on the staff report. Starts on page 3. The language starts on page 7 in how we measure height of accessory dwelling units. And then we diverted a little bit in how we would move forward with ADUs and so forth. So as we move forward, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, and that's why I wanted to show you this first exhibit. This is a definition from the code. So I didn't provide this exhibit, but this is a literal exhibit or attachment in our zoning code, in our definitions, to allow us to define how we measured the highest point. So as you see here, what's on top is the actual definition that's in the city code. As we move down, and here we're moving down, the first is the coping of a flat roof. So I color-coded these to show you that flat roof, and that's the coping of it. The second one is the deck of the mansard roof, and that's the one with orange on the right-hand side. And then the last part, which is in green, going back to it, it simply says the mean level between the eaves and ridge for all gable, hip, or gambrel roof. So I'm going to go back down to the green line. And this is not exact, this green line that I drew here. This is just to represent the average between the eave. If I could, do you see my mouse right there? And the ridge, say in the hip roof. The same would be for the gable and the ridge here, and then the gambrel. Again, this is not exact, just to give us a quick idea. There is no mention of the good old shed roof. However, a shed roof in its form, it's half of a gable roof. That's all that is. It's a gable roof cut in half. So we have been, historically or traditionally, we have always gone to that same mean level. In that, and there's, if you want to discuss that, we can move on with that. Given that, I'd like to move on to the samples that we provided on page 5. And I have a lot more to show you, so I'm going to switch my screen real quick. Unless council has any quick questions about how we measure height currently? No questions on that? So if that's the case, we're going to move on. And I apologize, it's a different document. I think I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to share again. We're very excited about this exhibit. Anytime now. There it is. So we broke up 3 examples of the gable, hip, the gable or the hip. And these are what we call cross sections. Think of it as a wedding cake that you slice it, you open up that piece of cake. This is what you would see in the inside, if you will. If you have any questions, please interrupt me. We could provide different pitches in that the pitch determines the height, in that the pitch or the slope is a function of rise over the run. All of these examples have been designed at 24 feet, and that we believe that would be a good size or minimal size for a 2-car garage. So they're all drafted at the exact same thing, as far as the width. The gray the gray examples across the top is the current code. The red is the language that was requested by council. And then the blue was the original language that staff requested. I do have a little bit of color in the measurements, and the reason being is that I wanted to identify what is the governing mechanism that makes these structures so high. The first one, for example, on the 1212 gable or hip, it's the 20-foot. Again, this is existing code. This is the overall height. So on all of these exhibits, the overall height will be represented on the right of each cross section, and the 15 here, what do we call it? The sidewall height will be represented on the left. And for the example on the 1212 roof pitch, this sidewall height is 13 and a half. Reason being is that the roof pitch dictates where this line ends up being. With that said, we drafted everything to compare apples to apples, as if everything was on a flat lot. There's infinite slopes out there, and we would take all the time in the world showing those scenarios. Then what we wanted to show you was a 10-foot garage area. We came up with this with an 8-foot garage door plus 2-foot for clearance area. The floor joists we drafted, they're all drafted at 1 foot, 12 inches. And then the interior height of the second story, we drafted it at 8. I understand that code does allow you to go to 7, but 8 is what we find that's comfortable for any human being, and we can play around with that. And if we have any questions about the building code, Don Simons is here. I am not a building code expert. Don is. So he'll be more than happy to answer those. So moving on to the gray area, this is why on the gable and hip, this is why we've been saying that it's difficult to accommodate a 2-story building with the sidewall height, with the current code. In that if you have a 12-12 roof pitch, the higher the roof pitch, the higher it goes, the higher that it could be built, and you could accommodate an approximate area. As we drop down to 612, it gets smaller. Sorry, there's some lag time with the cursor here. And if we go down to 412, it even gets smaller. Moving on to the right, this is a flat. This is supposed to represent a flat structure, which the governing height parameter is the 15-foot parameter. The next one is a gambrel height, and I could expand on this. It's the same thing as far as the average height, and it could easily accommodate the 8 and the 10. And the last one is a mansard height, which is the maximum height of a mansard, if you remember, is the deck of the mansard being at that maximum height, which would be 20 feet. Any questions on the existing code, the gray ones across the top? With that said, we're going to move forward comparing the current code with the 25 peak request that was made by council, where again, we start on the left-hand side with a 12-12 roof pitch for gable and hip, as it does have some constraints as far as that clearance area. Then we move on to the 612 and 412, no issues there, being governed again by the 25-foot parameter. Moving on to the flat roof, 25 gives us a lot more height than what we need, in that, again, we wanted to compare apples to apples, so we have the 10-foot bottom level with the 8-foot second story, and we have a 5-foot difference between the ceiling of that 8-foot and the very, very top of the roof. So this is providing a lot more than what is needed in our eyes as far as that flat roof. Moving on to the gambrel, it's about the same as current code with the 25-foot height parameter, and then the mansard, it would be the deck of the roof. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get the mouse to line up. I don't think anyone would have that much roof area between the 8-foot ceiling and the very top of the roof. However, I'm just showing you the worst case scenario based on that parameter. On the gambrel and the mansard, again, we have infinite possibilities of different roof pitches. We had to pick one, and we had to stick with one of them. As you can see across the vertical columns, they are all the same roof pitch. So we're not showing you, we didn't switch anything. We just wanted to compare apples to apples. And apparently, if that say on the gambrel roof pitch before I move on? I'm just really struggling. Is it there? Here we go. This pitch could be steeper or less steeper, and the same could be with the top one. Again, we just had to pick one, and I could tell you what that is if you're curious about that. Any questions about the city council language? That's the middle row in red.
I have some questions about dormer windows. Do you have a different example that will show those?
I do.
So I will hold my question so you can finish explaining.
Yeah, we have a different presentation to show you, not necessarily the dilemma, it's not a dilemma, but it's not even a challenge, but it's a scenario based on dormers that can be accommodated on all of these scenarios, by the way. And it applies the same across the board. And then, if you don't mind, I'll show you the staff example. Again, we start on the left with a 12-12 gable or hip roof, which based on the additional 5, which was what was submitted by Lisa Hicks, the overall height that's shown on the right gets bumped from 20 to 25, measured from average, and then the sidewall height, which is 15, would be bumped to 20. We get 2 full stories on a 12-12 roof pitch. On the 6-12, we also get the 2 full stories, very similar to the council here, which is this maximum height is 26.5. The council here is 25. On the 4-12 roof pitch, it gets trumped by the 20 sidewall height, not by the overall height on the right-hand side. Again, that's a function of the roof pitch. And this is 24.4, a little bit less than the one right above it. On the flat roof, and Richard is blocking me, but, oh, I got it right here. That one is 20 feet, which works perfectly. And the line on the very, very top, that's the 25. And then on the gambrel roof, boy, does it go up at 32.5, again, using the same roof pitch as shown up above with the 10 and the 8. And then the mansard one, it drops, it's exactly, you accommodate slightly more than the one above, than the council recommendation, yet the height is still the same at 25. It's just a function of where that mansard, where that angle starts and where it lines up. So any questions about the staff's original recommendation, which is the 25 and 20?
Any questions? Not so far.
Before we move on with the dormers, do we want to compare any of these here overall in the gray, the red, and the blue? That would be current code, council discussion at the peak, and then staff's recommendation.
I've got a question. I don't know if you've prepared to have an answer on this, but just based off maybe the last 5 years or recent history, what percentage of ADU applications are coming in with each of these type of roof typologies?
Sure. I don't have percentages ready, but I have a good idea. Mansard, none. Gambrel, we received 1 during my 6 years here. Everything else is a combination of, or a simple gable or hip or flat, or a combination thereof, with one side being a flat and the other side being a hip or gable. So 0 mansard, I've seen 1 gambrel, everything else. So 99% would be on this side.
And what is the most typical roof pitch?
The most typical roof pitch would be a 412. And this is anecdotally. I don't have that data in front of me where I could tally it up. I don't do that.
So at a 412, under current code, that would be a 19.4, 19.4.
If that ADU or accessory dwelling unit is 24 feet, in that if it's wider, then it would be taller. If it's not as wide, it would be shorter. This is assuming that's a 24-foot width.
So let me ask about that 24-foot width, because the size of the footprint of the ADU is restricted by the size of the lot, right? It cannot take up any more space than 15% of the lot for an ADU, is that correct?
The accessory dwelling unit, and we're going to talk about, if you don't mind, we should talk about accessory dwelling units, and then we should talk about ADUs. The accessory dwelling unit regulates the percentage, where the code indicates that if we have a permitted use, it cannot be more than 10% of the lot. If the applicant wishes to build an accessory dwelling unit, including an ADU, that's more than that, that's between 11% of the lot and 15, they can then file a conditional use permit, and then the planning commission gets to review that, and then the commission could give them up to 15%. With that said, an ADU, as that was part of the question, is limited to a maximum livable space of 1,250 square feet, 1,250. Does that answer
Maximum
your
liv-
question?
Yeah,
And that does not include the garage based on the definition of floor area.
so regardless of what the footprint could be with the 15%, if it were to go up to 15%, it is still constrained by that 1,250 livable space.
If we're talking about an ADU.
ADU.
And that 10 and 15%, I failed to mention one more item. It's a combined effort of all accessory structures put together. It's not per single accessory dwelling unit. We have to add them all up. And that cannot be either 10 or 15%.
Are there instances in the city where there are more than one accessory dwelling unit
Yes, there are.
on a property?
Mr. Astorga, I think that you've confused accessory structure
I did.
with accessory dwelling unit.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Higginson. The code only allows up to one ADU per lot.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Maximum of 1,250 square feet livable space.
Correct,
Regardless of the lot size.
correct.
Okay, so that would be, even if an ADU were a two-story ADU that did not include a garage on the ground level, that were also livable space and it's a two-story, it would still be constrained to 1,250 square feet
Correct,
of space.
correct.
Okay,
So, sorry about my confusion with ADU and accessory structure.
so just one more question about this. So all of these, this is really helpful. First of all, thank you for including this. But I have a question about that 24-foot width. Is that right, what you said? These
Yes.
are all based on
Yes.
24-foot width? What, if we were going, do you know if we were going by a lot size, what would, if this were the maximum size that you could put on a lot, would this be a quarter-acre lot, a fifth-acre lot? Do we know what these widths, what the size of lot this would allow this?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I cannot answer in that there are too many variables in order for me to say the minimum lot size, say in the R4 is 8,000 square feet, that would yield the width of X, in that there's too many variables in what would be requested as far as the shape and what would the public require, in that there is no set correlation between the two. And the simple 24-foot width that we selected was simply based on the discussion we had before, in that the real reason we're trying to do this is to accommodate an ADU or additional space on top of a garage. Furthermore, before we turn it over to Lloyd, what trumps, if we do start to get a wider accessory structure, then the 25-foot would start to kick in. Again, as the slope or the pitch, it's a function of a ratio between the vertical component and the horizontal. If it gets wider, it gets taller, but then the 25 or the 20, that would be what limits it. I just wanted to get that out. Lloyd?
If I understand your question correctly, you're asking if you have a 1,250 square foot ADU, how does that translate to overall lot size, correct? So if we go with the 10% lot size, where 1,250 is 10% of the lot, that would give you an area of 12,500 square feet. That's about 0.28 acres. So just a little more than a quarter.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions before we move on? Okay,
Sorry, I do have a question. Okay, because I want to make sure that I understand the process, and I think it's important for all of us and the public to understand the process. Just because you had mentioned it, and I know we're looking at this, but I want to hone in on this while you had mentioned it. ADUs are approved by the administrative committee, is that correct?
Accessory dwelling units.
Yes, accessory dwelling units.
Hold on. ADUs that are up to 10% are approved by staff.
Does that include 10%? So up to and including 10% are approved by staff? And then between 10 and 15%, which would be our maximum?
Could you give me a little break to check the code? I don't want to give you incorrect information. May I double check the code?
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I apologize about that. I should know this. Any other question that I could look up?
No, just because you had mentioned it, so I thought, let's just make sure we're all understanding the process of how they get approved going forward. I mean, it's not going forward, we're not determining that tonight, but I had thought that it was the administrative committee that
It
approved
is,
all of them.
and it is coming back without, checking the code. Let me say this out loud. Internal ADUs are approved by staff, and the state took away that ability. Therefore, here it comes. All detached ADUs are approved by the administrative committee. I apologize, I didn't have that answer.
Internal ADUs, people have to come in and get a permit,
They do.
but we don't deny, the state,
They're very difficult to deny in that they don't have a size provision. They could be bigger than the house itself, as long as it's attached or connected legally. We don't have any. It would be in violation of state code if we denied it. So
Yeah.
they still have to sign a deed. No, I'm sorry, I'm talking about something else. Yeah, they still have to sign a deed restriction. Correct.
okay. Okay,
So to answer your question, Councilmember Price Hewish, yes, detached ADUs are approved by the administrative committee. Correct.
thank you. Okay, any other questions before we move on?
Sorry, now I just want to make sure it's really clear. So detached ADUs up to 10% are approved by the administrative committee. Detached ADUs from 11% to 15% are conditional use approved by the planning commission?
Correct. What triggers it is the additional 5% footprint.
That was the clarification I wanted to make as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on.
Moving on to the dormer question. So I'm going to stop sharing this so I can show you the scenario that we have. We're doing good on time, I think. Councilmember Child, can you see the screen here?
Yes, I can. Thanks.
Great. So moving on. And that's not working. We'll have to go to this view then. We all know what a dormer is, and we have different types of dormers, and I'm probably missing a whole bunch of different other categories, but just wanted to give you a quick idea since we're going to talk dormers. And what I really want to focus today is the inset dormer, specifically the inset dormer. On this other case, on this other website, they called it a shed dormer, the one that comes off the ridge of the roof. That's the peak. We're all on the same page there? Even though this next exhibit, it's not an ADU, it's a great example of a simple dormer on a hip roof. We're all on the same page? Then I'm going to show you another example here. This would be quite the inset dormer or the shed dormer as it comes off the exact ridge area, and it's a majority of the roof form. We're going to look at the same scenario from front and side elevation. As you can see here, it is the exact same wall. If you can see the cursor here on the right-hand side. And if you look at it from that side elevation, even though this is a 3D image, the majority of the roof itself is the actual inset dormer.
May I ask a question? Is there any prohibition in our building code to having this type of large inset dormer that goes, and would that impact currently how the height is measured? Like would the height be measured with the steeper pitch or the inset dormer?
Yeah, so as Don gets up, the building code's not going to prohibit this type. You did say building code, but I think you meant land use code, zoning. But Don is here. So not the building code or the land use code. There is no provision against this type of inset. I'm going to call that a major inset dormer. With that said, on this scenario, given the fact that the majority of the roof form, and if we look at it, if we were to be looking at it from up above on what we call a roof plan, this would be about, and I'm guessing here, 80% of the roof would be this inset area, and the remaining 20% or less would be the lower roof form. With that said, if we're taking the average grade of this structure here, it would be from the peak to the very top eave. So to answer your question, yes, it does impact based on the size of the inset dormer. And while the code doesn't make a distinction of it, it's just simple game of percentages. In that, in my eyes, if the inset dormer covers the majority of the roof, I'm going to call that the main roof form. And the lower roof structure here, the one with the steeper roof pitch that goes low, this would be part of an accessory type of minor roof form. Again, it's a game of percentages based on the majority minority. Here's the same one.
Francisco, so if I could, let me see if I can reiterate what you're saying.
Please.
The code does not say which way to measure a dormer and what counts as a roof and what doesn't. What I think Francisco does by practice is if more than 50% of the roof form is created by the dormer, then we count that as the roof. We've just had to make an interpretation. This probably doesn't happen very often.
It does not happen very often. On this one right here, it was an easy one, in that all I have to do is see the roof plan, and it's an easy one once you understand all the codes. Going back to some other examples, and I don't have that many, and I'm almost done. Here's another example of a major inset coming off the ridge. It's the exact same thing. And just to wrap up, this is also an inset, but it doesn't come off the ridge, and it's a smaller percentage of that roof area. Therefore, if I'm doing a height analysis on this structure, I'm taking the average or the mean from the ridge down to that point over there. I'm not even including that dormer, in that it's a small percentage, or it's a small feature of the overall roof form. The one just above it, I threw this one to complicate things. I would have to take a look at everything. I'd have to see how far it goes back. I believe that the overall roof would be more than the two inset dormers. But this is sometimes this is the world I live in that I have to be able to administer the code based on best practices. The code does give me that ability in the vagueness for interpretation. It does give that authority to the planning director to do that. I'm just giving you a day in the life of the planning director. I don't have the exact scenario here, but sometimes it gets a little bit more complicated than in other cases. So going back to Council Member Bradshaw's question regarding the dormer, the code doesn't address it. It all depends on if it's a dormer or if it's a major part of the roof with accessory roof features around it.
That's really helpful. Council, I hope you felt that was helpful. I thought that was good information. Thank you. Okay, so far, what questions do we have?
I don't suppose you made that chart that you had with the different roof types and the current code council requested and staff requested with any dormer window examples?
No, because no, I couldn't. In that, we need to turn it. I mean, we could add it, but the dormer analysis is more intended to be like this one that you see on here. It's more of a 3D analysis, or you got to look at the front elevation and the side in order to determine how big, how impactful it is on the roof. In that, this took me quite some time, the different color analysis. Give me a week and I could come back and give you a different scenario where I don't have to do any other thing. In that it's very time consuming to provide the analysis on the front and the side to take a look at the impact of the dormer.
And I appreciate, especially since I, asked for that kind of late on a Sunday night, that you took the time to do that. I found it really helpful. I'm sure colleagues did. It seems to me that we're balancing two interesting components of the structure. The kind of the overall height based on what roof type is picked and the impact that has on neighboring properties. And we're balancing that against the fact that we allow for these accessory dwelling units to be built and the livable space that different roof types give. And that's why I was curious about dormers and how we would, how they would impact, how you would measure, and then correspondingly how they would impact the space that someone could use to then create that living area for someone. Because those to me seem to be the 2 points that you're really wrestling with. So.
Thanks. Any other
Don,
questions?
did you have anything that you felt like you needed to add?
Yeah, just, can you go back to the pictures that you just had up?
I just barely left. I'm just kidding.
Oh, the one that you just closed up. So as Francisco was talking about the dormers, the one picture, this one here, from a building standpoint, that's not a dormer. The lower roof, in my view, is an architectural element of the building. If you notice, the end walls are straight up. So the outside wall of the house is the same. If you took off that lower roof, it would just be a 2-story building. So you can't put the whole square footage of the lower part and call it a dormer just because you have eaves coming down on the outside. It would have to be inset. The definition of a dormer is inset into the roof. I'm paraphrasing that, but it's inset in the roof. So this example is the same thing. That is not a dormer. It's made to look like a dormer, and it looks nicer than just a flat wall that goes up to the second floor. But the eave of the roof would be where you would, the upper roof in that picture would be where you measure it from.
Francisco, what
Thank
was
you.
that, Don?
That's helpful.
Could
Yeah.
you go up to that top example you
Don.
had of the different types of dormers on this slide?
This one?
Yes. So if I'm understanding right, the farthest over one that's underneath or above the word wall, that's sort of the example you're talking about versus where the one that's underneath the word
Correct.
roof, that one would really change how you were considering then
Yes.
where you would measure the roof versus the additional living space it might create inside the structure by using that.
Yep. Yep, the one in the middle is a true dormer. The inset one in that example is still, even though it goes to the peak, it's still a dormer because it's within the roof area. And it's set back from the outside wall, from the side wall where the identifying words are, where it says inset. So that's the wall, and it's inset from that. But the one on the right, that's not a true dormer. It adds living space, but it's not really a dormer. We haven't had to deal with that example, but it would be a little bit more tricky. We probably would ask them to move that back so it's all four sides of the dormer or within the roof area.
Thank you. That's great. Okay, well, that's good. That's helpful. Thank you. Okay, any other questions before we continue? Okay, so as we're discussing what the council wants to do you have more to your presentation?
Yeah, no, I don't have anything else to show you, but the only item that I would like to bring up is that we respect the legislative body's ultimate decision, and we will support it, uphold it, and defend it. With that said, we did feel comfortable with the staff's original recommendation. We do see that at the bottom, and the reason being is that the way that we measure the primary structure is not to the peak. It is to the average grade per that exact same definition that we have on here. It applies to all things structures, and that while we may say that the gambrel is very high with the 32. Perhaps we could bring a happy medium and make it very similar. If you can see my cursor here, the mansard roof is to the deck of the 25. Perhaps we could change that gambrel roof to be very similar, that the peak or the deck of the mansard is 25 feet, which would bring it down very similar to the one that council had. Other than that, we did feel comfortable with the 5 and 5 for the +5 for the overall height, the +5 for the sidewall height. And with that said, we would rather have the staff's original recommendation based on the added setbacks, in that it would be an 8-foot setback, not a 3, as we discussed that last time. And with that said, we will respectfully support, defend, and administer whatever gets decided, as you're the legislative body.
Thank you.
Mr. Astorga, could you spend 1 minute talking about the mitigating effects of that increased setback?
The mitigating effect is that first we need to understand that the current code, we're looking at the gray here, if you don't mind, allows all of these structures to be 3 foot from the side and the rear yard, as long as they're located 10 feet behind the front wall plane. I don't think we have an issue with that. So all these are already allowed across the top at 3 feet. This would be a bump, say, from the 26 to the 30, as I'm looking at the 12-12, the 6-12, again, assuming that they're 24 feet wide, from the 21.5 to 26, 19 to 24, and so forth. You can see the difference here in that we find that if we bump it up, if we keep them more towards the middle, that we would be able to mitigate the impacts of the neighbor. Specifically on the side yard setback, in that a house could be there. A typical setback is 8 foot. So if it's good enough on a side yard for a house, which the maximum building height for a house is 35 feet, why wouldn't we entertain an accessory dwelling structure in that it's mitigated, as discussed earlier today, by the 10 or 15% coverage? If it's an ADU, we're looking at the 1250. The administrative committee gets to mitigate impacts via that conditional use permit, where we take a look at window placements and whatnot. And I think my minute is up. And that's why we were comfortable based on we called it the 5 for 5, 5 feet back, 5 feet above provision. It would be on the side yard and also along the rear yard. And we were requesting to affect not just ADUs, but all things accessory structure. The logic was simply, if it's good enough for a house, why not for an accessory structure that has additional restrictions and limitations? I took 2 minutes, sorry.
And to have consistency, to have continuity,
In the way that we measure height.
could help avoid confusion and,
It would, Mayor Harris, it would exactly do that.
what other, yeah.
Do you know how many ADU applications we've received, just typically per year?
No, I don't. I wrote that number it's on the general plan, which I wrote, which you requested it, but I don't remember off the top of my head. I apologize.
Sorry, and I mean detached, external ADU
It
applications.
varies on a given year. I want to say, I'm going to guess here, between 4 and 6, maybe not even that many. Maybe not even that many, right, Lloyd?
Yeah, if it's 3 or 4, I'd be surprised. It's pretty low.
Okay, so I'm wondering about council's thoughts about the question about consistency. If we have one method of measuring for single-family homes and then another method, what are your thoughts about that?
I'm going to just say, especially now that I know there are so few, and I'm just speaking, when I say ADU from here on out through the meeting, I'm only going to be talking about external ADUs, which is what we're talking about tonight. It does not give me a lot of heartburn to think that we could have a different measurement requirement for this. It could just be spelled out. So for me, and I'm not the building official or, on the planning department, but I feel like there are so few. And if we're trying to achieve a certain outcome that is sure, that is knowable, that is, I think it doesn't seem that difficult to just, look at the roof line. So for me, I don't have heartburn over that. And I would rather have the surety of knowing that the ADUs are not going to be over a certain height.
Any other comments or thoughts on that?
I think I'm still more comfortable with the council requested option, provided we add in the 8-foot side setback. I think it provides a lot of consistency in how we measure. 32.6 makes me uncomfortable, 30 makes me uncomfortable with the fact that those roof types could be selected, and that would be really dramatic.
I would agree with that. I would feel comfortable with that, with the additional setback, the 8-foot setback, with the measurement at the roof line, with the 25-foot limit.
Councilman Murray, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just trying to formulate the thoughts, because I'm in favor of the middle row of those recommendations. I still think too, there's wording and of making sure that the ADUs align with the aesthetics of the primary resident. So if you have a flat roof, which we don't have a lot, but it should align, we should still make sure that it's not something that's coming in and completely disrupting the whole flow of the neighborhood or the community or the culture of what that neighborhood would look like. And the ones I've been around and looked at so far, even though they were under a different code, they were still aligned to the primary resident look and feel as well.
Council,
if I
yeah,
could.
Councilman Higginson, please.
One of the deciding factors for me is the fact that the existing home could have an addition put on it that's 35 feet tall. I'd be supportive of staff's recommendation, as I think it still gives better or more architectural options for folks. I think it's important for us to remember as well that this item was not staff-generated or council-generated. This item was generated by an application from a resident. And I'd like to ask Mr. Astorga, will the 25-foot maximum allow the resident applicant the flexibility to build their building?
It would.
Thank you.
The challenge that they had was the sidewall.
Thank you very much. But Mayor, I'm comfortable with staff's recommendation that was also endorsed and heightened by the Planning Commission.
Council, the staff's recommendation that Councilman Higginson is referring to, would you feel comfortable with making some modifications, like, for example, not allowing the height that the gambrel option would provide, but allowing, I mean, are there some aspects of the staff recommendation that you would agree with, or?
What's of the gamble, what's the pitch, what's the most common? 12, 12,
It's all over the place. The top pitch was 412, and the lower pitch was 40 to 12. My only comment about the gambrel, it looks very tall. The only reason we received a gambrel was not so it would meet this blue. It was because they couldn't do more so of the 1212 under the current code. Because of that, they couldn't do it. They switched to the gambrel, as you can see, for all the way from the left to the right. It provides more area. We don't see gambrel roof forms. The only advantage is that the wall is the roof on that lower side, and therefore they're able to capitalize on that area right here. So this was not, the blue one is not what we were about to approve or even entertain. We were entertaining this, which completely met the code. And it was because they couldn't get the whole area very similar to that 1212. Mm-hmm. So if the blue code was enacted, it would have met under the blue, and I don't know if it would have been 30. I guess it would. It would be it depends on it. It probably would be under the 25 and 20.
Being somewhat familiar with that project, I can tell you that it's 24 feet or less.
So it wasn't that the design, they were married to the gambrel. They just wanted the additional height for the second story.
I'd like to answer the mayor's question. I personally would not go beyond what the council recommendation to the staff, the heights that would be allowed with the staff recommendation. There's something that I'm just not overall thrilled about in the first place. I do think that there are some mitigating factors with that help with the setbacks. In the staff report, and I think this was just omitted, that the council recommendation would include those 8-foot setbacks. I think it's just because I look around the city and I see external ADUs are happening around the city, and we've all seen really great examples throughout the city. You can drive around a lot of neighborhoods and see where they've been built. And they're probably achieving the goal of providing a little additional housing, which is by definition accessory, not primary, which makes it different than doing an addition on your home. I do respect the applicant for taking the initiative and bringing this. But I think why I'm not totally thrilled is because I feel like we don't want to legislate for the entire city based on one applicant. But it sounds like if we did go with the city council recommendation, they would be able to achieve the plan that they're hoping to do. But I think we have to look at the balancing of the whole city. And we do have, to Councilman Murray's point, we have large swaths of our city that are on quarter-acre and third-acre lots, and where the profile of the housing is not really very tall. It's ramblers and one-story homes. And the possibility, and once we make a determination at this level, these things will not be coming back to us. They will be just determined at the administrative committee level and at the planning commission level. And this is R1. This is, well, not that we couldn't look at it again, but this is a determination that will be guiding those decisions or allowing for these heights. And I'm not comfortable with them. And I do hope going forward, as they have done in the past, because you can see good examples throughout the city, there is a lot of architectural consistency, a lot of integrity in how these are being built. So I do applaud the approvals that have already happened to this point. I would not have brought this, but as a council-led initiative, I would not go any higher than what the city council has recommended, with a maximum 25-foot at the roof line.
Councilmember Bryce Hewish, would you elaborate on what you mean by ADUs are being built with integrity currently in the city?
Well, that's a good follow-up question. And I think just where I have seen, and I've driven around a lot of neighborhoods, what I mean by integrity is like I've not seen many where it's a big visual or obtrusive, eyesore. But I do think going forward, as this may become more utilized throughout the city, because we are a city that has only really infill opportunities. So as an infill city, this may become, and we know that it's being talked about at the state level, at the local levels, there may be more ADU development throughout the city. So when I think about integrity, I think, is it overly burdening the neighbors? Is it intruding on their privacy? Is it intruding on their quiet use and enjoyment of their property use? And so, and just generally fitting in kind of with the overall neighborhood
Thank you.
aesthetic.
Mayor Harris, I have one
Yes.
more comment.
Yes.
I just want to focus in the middle section here, in that, in comparing the council 25 peak, the staff, and even the current code, we lose the 20-foot sidewall height. So I can comfortably say that most of accessory structures, including ADUs, are going to be between a flat roof and a 412. If you look at the 412, we're looking at 20 feet 8 inches. If you're looking at the flat roof, we're looking at possibly a maximum of 24 sidewall height as it meets 25. What I'm implying is that a 312, a 212, heck, a 112 is going to be somewhere between 28 feet, 20 feet, 8 inches, and 24 feet. In that the current code has a maximum provision of no more than 15 feet, and the staff it gets trumped right here by the 20 foot. So as the 25 feet, as you're indicating, you're letting go the sidewall height parameter. And those are getting slightly taller. I heard based on the exact same scenario that staff had with the 8 foot added. I just wanted to make sure that you didn't forget about that. We would be letting go the sidewall parameter that does serve a function.
That's a good reminder, thank you. And
Well, we could
also-
add that in. We could add a sidewall requirement in.
We could.
And as was recommended by Planning Commission, their sidewall recommendation was 20, and I think that's somewhere between 18 and 20 would fit within. I think that is a great point, and so I would want to include that as well.
are other council members in favor of adding a sidewall requirement?
20, yes, 18, no.
Since it seems like we're probably going to continue discussing this at like a future work session, I'd be interested in seeing how that impacts our examples. I'm particularly happy with the way the council example on the 612 and the 412 allows those two roof types to have more internal space without dramatically increasing the sidewall heights. Our planning director had indicated those are the most common roof types that he sees, the hip and gable style. And so, you know, we've, particularly for the 412, well, and really the 612, we've made just a lot more usable space. And if that's the majority of what we're going to see, and we can ensure that those other potentially less common roof types don't get so dramatically high, that's where I feel comfortable staying. You know, and adding in the sidewall heights may help us with the less common flat, gambrel, and mansard, where the sidewall height might, you know, may become an imposing factor on neighboring properties. So happy to see that added.
Thank you. Just a quick question. We have in external accessory dwelling units, we have a requirement that it be, is there a requirement that it be less, a certain amount less than the height of the, okay, there's not that requirement.
We don't have that requirement. I'm just thinking real quick, if we could request that via the CUP. I don't believe that we have specific language regarding the conditional use permit for size and compatibility. We focus more on use and transportation, landscaping and buffering. There are 4 parameters in the code
Okay.
where it gives the planning commission ability to mitigate for. I don't believe that compatibility or scale and size is one of them.
Okay, that's okay. Thank you. Just curious. Okay, well, we've run out of time, so we'll have to, but it seems to me that there is a majority of the council that is interested in the council's option there, the middle one, the red one.
Mayor,
Yes.
I know Councilwoman Child has made it a point to zoom in, and maybe we could give her just 30 seconds to let us know how she feels, if she's still on.
Yeah. Councilwoman Child, do you have thoughts?
I feel like everything that I have been thinking has already been said. Again, just the overarching feeling that I think we're all feeling on the council is this desire to advocate for our neighbors, one way or another, right? Allowing more options or protecting their privacy. So I do want to thank the staff for putting all the work into this. This is very, very helpful to me to have these visuals, especially. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, I think that the direction that we have is that we will look toward the middle red, and maybe a consideration for a,
I think I heard a 20-foot sidewall provision.
yeah, yep,
I think I got 2 head nods, 3 head nods,
Okay,
4
thank
head
you.
nods.
okay, excellent. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, all council, and we're just going to take a very brief break before we come back for our regular city council meeting.